Hey, hi, hi, how are you? John O'Keefe here. It's been a long time. I got busy last week and I apologize for not being around. It is really, really nice to make your acquaintance again. John O'Keefe welcomes you here into our space. You'll notice I've made a little bit of a change as we are going through a little bit of a change in our household. So I've got a little extra space and I was kind of tired of sitting in that one chair. So I decided to sit in this chair. The cool thing is it's kind of like I get a little bit of an opportunity to be in a different direction. And you actually maybe be able to see the book, because me sitting up so close, sometimes you miss that. Anyway, John O'Keefe here. Welcome. Gregor the Overlander is our book. We have Underlanders. We have two Overlanders. We have just been to the crawlers region, the cockroaches. The cockroaches say, no, we are not going to join this quest, as you right now are potentially breaking the peace between us and the rats and you, and we don't want to do that. Which makes total sense, right? Like, I mean, you're not going to want to offend one side when you're crawlers, right? Both sides of this thing can like demolish you. Well, that's not true. Cockroaches seem to live through everything. Anyway, so we are at chapter 14 and a half. We are on page 155, the last time that we were here. And let's get busy. Let's have some conversation here. So one of the things that we will sit, said one stiffly, and Gregor had the feeling the bug wanted him to mind his own business. Everyone ate hungrily except Vicus, who seemed distracted. So when leave we? Asked Henry, through a mouth of fish. Oh, remember? So when leave we? Asked Henry, through a mouth of fish. We do not, said Solomon. The crawlers have refused to come. Lux's head snapped up indignantly. Refused? On what grounds? They do not wish to invite the anger of King Gorger by joining our quest, said Vicus. They have peace with both humans and rats now. They do not want to unseat it. That's where we laugh. Now what? Thought Gregor. They needed 2 roaches. It said so in the prophecy of Grey. If the roaches didn't come, they'd still rescue his father? Wouldn't they? Could they still rescue his father? We have asked them to rethink the proposition, said Solomon. They know the rats are on the march. This may sway them in our direction. Or in the rats, muttered Luxa, and Gregor secretly agreed. The roaches had debated trading Overlanders to the rats, even when they knew the rats would eat them. And that was yesterday, when there was no war. If Boots hadn't been so appealing, no doubt they would be dead now. The roaches weren't fighters. Gregor thought that they would do what was best for their species, and the rats were probably the stronger ally. Or they would be, if you could trust them. What makes the roaches think they can believe the rats? Asked Gregor. The crawlers do not think in the same manner we do, said Vicus. How do they think? Asked Gregor. Without reason or without consequence, Henry broke in angrily. They are the stupidest creatures in the Underland. Why, they can barely even speak. Silence, Henry, said Vicus sharply. Gregor glanced back at Temp and Tick, but the roaches gave no sign that they had heard. Of course they had. The roaches didn't seem too bright, but it was just rude to say it in front of them. Besides, that wasn't going to make them want to come along. Remember you, when Sandwich arrived in this Underland, the crawlers had been here for countless generations. No doubt they will remain when all thought of warm blood had passed Underland, said Vicus. That is rumor, said Henry dismissively. No, it is not. Cockroaches have been around like 350 million years, and people haven't been here for even 6, said Gregor. His dad had showed him a timeline of when different animals had evolved on Earth. He remembered being impressed by how old cockroaches were. How do you know this? Luxa spoke abruptly, but Gregor could tell she was actually interested. It's science. Archaeologists dig up fossils and stuff, and they can tell how old things are. Cockroaches, crawlers, are really old and they've never changed much, said Gregor. He was getting on shaky ground here, but he thought that was true. Why is he on shaky ground? You get that? Like, he started conversing about this, been around for a long time. He's pretty much running out of his ideas, right? And so he's here. He was getting on shaky ground here, but he thought it was true. He's getting to the point where he's not really quite sure if it's fact or fiction. I have a friend named Hannah who's been kind of dealing with this recently. And so it's this idea of kind of fact or fiction. He was getting on shaky ground here, but he thought that was true. They're pretty amazing. He hoped Temp and Tick were listening. Micah smiled at him. For a creature to survive so long, it's no doubt as smart as it need be. I do not believe in your science, said Henry. The crawlers are weak. They cannot fight. They will not last. That is how nature intended it. Gregor thought of his grandma, who was old and dependent on the kindness of stronger people now. He thought of Boots, who was little and couldn't yet open a door. And there was his friend Larry, who had to go to the hospital emergency room 3 times last year with his asthma flaring up and he couldn't get air into his lungs. Is that what you think of? Is that what you think, Luxa? Said Gregor. Do you think something deserves to die if it's not strong? It does not matter what I think, if that is the truth, said Luxa evasively. But is it the truth? It's an excellent question for the future ruler of Regalia to ponder, said Vicus. They ate quickly, and Vicus suggested that they all try to sleep. Gregor had no idea if it was night or not, but he felt tired and didn't object. While he spread out a thin woven blanket at the edge of the chamber, Boots tried to teach Temp and Tick to play patty cake. The roaches waved their front legs in confusion, not understanding what was going on. Pat cake, bake a man, bake me cake fast you can. Pat it, pick it, mark with a B, put it off and for be bugging me, sang Boots, and she clapped and touched the roach's feet. The bugs were completely baffled. What sings the princess? What sings? Asked Temp. Or maybe it was Tick. It's a song we sing with the babies in the Overland, said Gregor. She put you in it. That's a big honor, he said. She only puts someone in a song if she really likes them. Me like big bug, said Boots with satisfaction, and sang the song again with the roaches. Sorry, guys, she has to sleep now, said Gregor. Come on, Boots, sleepy time. Say goodnight. Boots spontaneously hugged the roaches. Night, big bug, sit tight. Gregor was glad that she left out, don't let the bed bugs bite. Gregor snuggled down with her under the blanket on the hard stone floor. After her long nap, she wasn't very sleepy. He let her play with the flashlight a while, clicking it on and off, but he was afraid she'd run down the batteries, and it was making the Underlands restless. Finally, he got her to settle down and sleep. As she drifted off, he thought he heard Temp, or maybe it was Tick, whispering, honors us, the princess honors us. He didn't know what woke him. By the stiffness in his neck, he must have been lying on the hard floor for hours. He drowsily reached over to pull Boots' warm body next to him, but he found only cold stone. His eyes snapped open and he sat up. His lips parted to call her name and his vision came into focus. No sound came out. Boots was in the center of the big round chamber, rocking from foot to foot as she turned calmly in a circle. The flashlight she held illuminated the room in sections. He could see the figures stretching out in every direction in concentric rings. They swayed in unison, some to the left, some to the right, with slow, mesmerizing movements. In total silence, hundreds of cockroaches were dancing around Boots. Chapter 15. Oh, geez, they're going to eat her, thought Gregor, springing to his feet and smacking his head into the ceiling. Ow! It had been a mistake to take off his hard hat to sleep. A hand grasped his shoulder to steady him, and he made out Vicus with a finger pressed to his lips. Hold them not, he whispered urgently. But they're going to hurt her, Gregor whispered back. He hunched down and put a hand on his head. He could feel a big lump already rising out of the scalp where he hit the roof. No, Gregor. They honor her. They honor Boots in a manner most sacred and rare, whispered Solvit from somewhere next to Vicus. Gregor looked back at the roaches and tried to make sense of it. Boots didn't seem in any immediate danger. None of the bugs were actually touching her. They just swayed and turned and bowed in their slow rhythmic dance. There was something else. The solemnity of the scene, the complete silence, the absorption. It hit him. The roaches weren't just honoring Boots. They were worshiping her. What are they doing? Asked Greg. It's a ring dance. It is said the crawlers perform it only in the greatest secrecy for ones they believe to be chosen, answered Vicus. In our history, they have only performed it for one other human, and that was Sandwich himself. Chosen for what? Gregor whispered, worried. He hoped the cockroaches didn't think that they could keep Boots just because they did some dance around her. Chosen to give them time, whispered Gregor. Sorry, said Vicus simply, as if that explained all. Gregor translated that in his head to mean chosen to give them life. Maybe it was something simpler. From the moment they'd landed in the Underland, the roaches had felt a very special connection to Boots. If they just found him, he'd have a one-way ticket to the rats. End of story. But Boots had befriended them so quickly. She hadn't been repulsed or superior or scared. Gregor thought the fact that she had liked the roaches had made a great impression on them. Most of the humans had such a low opinion of them. Then there was that strange thing about recognizing temp. He still couldn't explain that. The roaches did a series of turns and landed flat on the ground facing Boots. Then, circle by circle, they melted away into the darkness. Boots watched them go without comment. When the chamber had cleared, she gave a head-splitting yawn and padded over to Gregor. "My sleepy," she said. Then she curled up against him and nodded right off. Gregor took the flashlight from her hand and in its beam saw all the other Underlanders were awake, staring. "She's sleepy," he said, as if nothing unusual had happened. He clicked off the light. When they woke, the roaches announced that Temp and Tick would be joining the quest. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that they were coming because of Boots. Gregor was torn between being very proud and wanting to laugh his head off. It turned out Boots was special weaponry after all. The party quickly readied itself to depart. Temp and Tick absolutely refused to ride on any bat without Boots. This caused a brief moment because Boots had to ride with Gregor, and that meant that one bat had to carry both the Overlanders and the roaches. The bats could handle the load, but it meant 4 inexperienced flyers would be alone on one bat. Vicus gave the job to Henry's big black bat, Aries. As he was both strong and agile, and Henry rode with Luxa. Aries was instructed to fly above the others just in case one of the roaches fell off and had to be caught before it hit the ground. None of this talk seemed to relax Temp and Tick, who were obviously terrified at the idea of soaring through wide open spaces high above the ground. Gregor found himself trying to reassure them, which was ironic since he didn't much like flying either. He also wished that he could have any bat but Aries. Henry's bat probably disliked him as much as Henry did. They didn't have time for breakfast, but Meredith passed out chunks of cake and dried beef to eat on the journey. Vicus told Gregor that they'd be flying several hours before they took a break, so he put a second diaper over Boots' first one. He also repositioned her in the backpack so that she was looking backward instead of over his shoulder. That way, she could chatter with Temp and Tick and maybe distract them from so much fear. Gregor gingerly climbed up on Aries' back and dangled his legs off the bat's shoulders. Temp and Tick scrambled on behind and clung to Aries' back, fur for dear life. Gregor thought he saw the bats wince a little, but Aries didn't say anything. The bats hardly ever spoke out loud, though. It seemed to require a lot of effort. They probably talked to one another in squeaks too high for human ears to hear. "We must travel now to the land of the spinners," said Vicus. "Remember how frequently the rats patrol this area." "Fly close together. We may have need of one another's protection," said Solibit. "To the air!" The bats took off. Boots was pleased as punch with her new traveling companions. She sang her whole repertoire of songs, which included Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Hey Diddle Diddle, the Itsy Bitsy Spider, the alphabet song, and of course, Patty Cake, Patty Cake. Having finished, she sang them again and again and again. On about the 19th round, Gregor decided to teach her row, row, row your boat. just for a little variety. Boots picked it up immediately and then tried to teach it to the roaches. She didn't seem to mind their off-key voices, although Gregor could feel the muscles in Aries' neck getting tighter with each verse. Gregor could tell the roaches' domain sprawled over a much larger area than Regalia or the bats' caves. The humans and bats had small, densely populated lands that could be protected easily. The roaches lived across miles and miles and miles of the underland. How did they keep themselves safe from attack with all this space to defend? The answer came to him as they flew over a valley that held thousands of roaches. The crawlers had numbers, huge numbers. Compared with the humans, if they were attacked, they could afford to lose more fighters. And with so much space, they could retreat endlessly and make the rats follow them. Gregor thought about the roaches in their kitchen at home. They didn't fight. They ran for it. His mom swatted a lot of them, but they always came back. After what seemed like an eternity, Gregor felt Aries coasting in for a landing. They settled down on the bank of a lazy, shallow river. Gregor hopped off and onto something soft and spongy. He reached down to investigate. His hand came up filled with grayish-green leafy vine. Plants. Plants grew down here without the help of the gaslight the Underlanders used. How does this grow without light? He asked Vicus, holding a handful of the stuff. It has light, said Vicus, pointing to the river. There is fire from the earth. Gregor peered into the water and saw tiny jets of light shooting out of the river bottom. Fish darted in and darted out of a variety of plant life. The long vines of certain plants crept onto the banks. Oh, they're like miniature volcanoes, thought Gregor. This river runs through Regalia as well. Our cattle live off the plants, but they are unfit for humans to eat, said Sullivan. Gregor had been eating beef jerky all morning without wondering what the cows ate. He could probably spend years in the Underland figuring out how it worked. Not that he wanted to. Cockroaches, who were fishing along the banks, had a quick exchange with Temp and Tick and pulled several large fish out of the river with their mouths. Meredith cleaned them and set them on the torches to grill. Gregor set Boots down to stretch her legs and asked the cockroaches to keep an eye on her. They ran up and down the banks, steering her away from the water and letting her ride on their backs. Word of her arrival spread quickly, and soon dozens of bugs appeared. They settled down just to watch the princess. When the food was cooked, Vicus made a point inviting Temp and Tick to join them. It is time, he said in response to Henry's frown. It is time those of the prophecy became of one journey, of one purpose, of one mind. All are equal here. Temp and Tick still sat off to the side behind Boots, but they ate with everyone else. It's not far now, said Vicus, pointing at a small tunnel. One could make it shortly, even on foot. To my dad? Asked Gregor. No, to the spinners. We must persuade two to join us on the quest, said Vicus. Oh yeah, the spinners, said Gregor. He hoped that they were more into the trip than the roaches had been. They were just finishing up the meal when all 5 bats jerked their heads up. Rats, hissed Aries, and everyone started moving, except for Temp and Tick. All the roaches vanished into the shallow tunnels that led away from the riverbank. Vicus thrust Boots and Gregor's backpack and shoved them toward the tunnel he had pointed out earlier. Run, he ordered. Gregor tried to object, but Vicus cut him off. Run, Gregor. The rest of us are expendable. You are not. The old man vaulted onto his bat and joined the other Underlanders in the air just as a squad of 6 rats stampeded onto the riverbank. The leader, a gnarled gray rat with a diagonal scar across his face, pointed at Gregor and hissed, Kill him! Stranded on the riverbank without a weapon, Gregor had no choice but to sprint for the mouth of the tunnel. Temp and Tick scurried after him. He glanced back for a second and saw Vicus knock the scarred rat into the river with the hilt of his sword. The other Underlanders' blades flashing were attacking the 5 remaining rats. Run, Gregor! Ordered Sullivan in a rough voice, so unlike the quiet one that he was used to hearing her with. Make haste! Make haste! Make haste! Urged Temp and Tick. Using his flashlight, Gregor started down the tunnel. It was just high enough that he could run upright. He realized that he had lost Temp and Tick somewhere and turned back to see the entire tunnel, floor to ceiling, was filling up with roaches. They weren't attacking the rats. They were using their bodies to form a barricade that would be nearly impossible to penetrate. Oh no, Gregor thought. They're just going to let themselves be killed. He turned back to help them, but the roaches nearest him insisted, Run, run, run with the princess. They were right. He had to go. He had to get Boots out of there. He had to save his dad. Maybe he even had to save the Underland from the rats. He didn't know, but right now, he could no more get through the 50-foot wall of cockroaches to fight the rats than the rats could get to him. He took off down the tunnel, setting a pace he thought he could maintain for a half an hour. At 20 minutes, he turned a corner and ran straight into an enormous spider web. Yuck. All right, I got to give you a little layout before we go into chapter 16, okay? I just want you to understand something. Spiders scare me. I respect them. I honor them. I appreciate what they do. I really do. But the idea of a spider, even as big as, I don't know, this, terrifies me. Gregor is now running into a giant spider web. His sister is hugging cockroaches. This is not a place that my life would go very well. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, I understand that I would probably live under all circumstances as best I could. The fact is, this man, spider webs? Oh. But as always, I will be brave and I will read. I will continue on with chapter 16. He ripped his face off the sticky ropes, and it felt like someone had yanked strips of adhesive tape off his skin. Ow! He said. He freed his flashlight arm, but the other remained enmeshed in the web. Boots was on his back, so she hadn't gotten caught. Hello, he called. Is anyone here? Hello! He shined the flashlight around, but all he could see was web. I am Gregor the Overlander. I come in peace, he said. I come in peace. Where did he get that? Probably from some old movie. Anybody home? He felt a light tugging on his sandals and looked down. A huge spider was wrapping his feet together with steady streams of silk. Oh. Hey, yelled Gregor, trying to free his feet, but in seconds the spider had spun its way up to his knees. You don't understand. I'm the warrior. In the prophecy, I'm the one who calls. The spider busily worked its way up his body. Oh man, thought Gregor, it's going to cover us completely. He felt the arm that was caught in the web tighten up against his body. Gigo, squeaked Boots. The silk ropes pressed her against his back as they encircled his chest. Vika sent me, yelled Gregor. And for the first time, the spider paused. He quickly followed up. Yeah, Vika sent me, and he's on his way, and he's going to be really mad you're wrapping us up. He waved his free arm with the flashlight for emphasis and caught the spider full in the face with the light. It skittered back a few yards, and Gregor got his first good look at this arachnid. 6 beady black eyes, bristly legs, and massive jaws that ended in curved, pointed fangs. He quickly diverted the flashlight beam. No point in making it angry. So, do you know Vicus? He asked. He should be here any minute and have some official meeting with your king, queen. Do you guys have a king or queen? Or maybe it's something else. We have a president, but that's different because you have to vote for them. He paused. So do you think you're going to wrap us now? The spider leaned down and snapped a thread with its jaws. Gregor and Boots shot up 50 feet in the air and yo-yoed up and down like they were on a huge rubber band. Hey! Gregor yelled. Hey! His lunch sloshed around in his stomach. Eventually, the bouncing stopped. Gregor shone the flashlight around him. In every direction, he could see spiders. Some were working busily. Others seemed to sleep. Every single one of them was ignoring him. This was new. The roaches and bats had greeted him civilly enough. A whole crowd of people in the stadium had fallen silent when he appeared, and the rats had gone into a rage when they'd met. But the spiders? They could care less. He yelled stuff at them for a while. Nice stuff, crazy stuff, annoying stuff. They didn't react. He got Boots to sing a couple rounds of the Itsy Bitsy Spider, since she had a special way with bugs. No response. Finally, he just gave up and watched them. An unlucky insect flew into their web. A spider ran over and drove its wicked fang into the bug, and it went still. Poison, thought Gregor. The spider quickly wrapped the insect in silk, broke it into pieces, and shot some kind of juice inside it. Gregor looked away when the spider started sucking out the bug's liquefied insides. Oh, that could have been us. That still could be us, he thought. He wished Vicus and others would show up. But would they show up? What had happened back on the riverbank? Had they been able to fight off the rats? Had anyone been hurt or worse, killed? He remembered Vicus ordering him to run. The rest of us are expendable. You are not. He must have been talking about the prophecy. They could always find more crawlers, flyers, and spinners. Nerissa might be able to stand in if something happened to Luxa or Henry. Or maybe they would make someone else the king or queen. But Gregor and Boots, two overlanders with a dad imprisoned by rats, they were irreplaceable. Gregor thought grimly of the people sacrificing themselves back on the riverbank. He should have stayed and fought, and even if he didn't stand much of a chance. They were risking their lives because they thought he was the warrior. But he wasn't. Surely that was clear by now. Minutes dragged by. Maybe the whole party had been wiped out, and he and Boots were on their own. Maybe the spiders knew that and were just letting them live so they could be nice and fresh when they decided to eat them. Kiko? Boots? Yeah, Boots, said Gregor. We go home? She asked plaintively. See Mama? Well, we have to get Daddy first, he said, trying to sound optimistic even though they were dangling helplessly in a spider's lair. Dada? Said Boots curiously. She knew their father from photos, though she'd never seen him in person. See? Dada? We get Dada, then we go home, said Gregor. See Mama? Boots insisted. Images of their mom began to make Gregor ache with sadness. See Mama? A spider near them began to make a humming sound that was picked up by the other creatures. It was a soothing, soft melody. Gregor tried to remember the tune so he could play it for his dad on his saxophone. His dad played too, jazz mostly. He bought Gregor his first saxophone, a used one from the pawn shop when he was 7, and started teaching him to play. Gregor had just begun lessons at the school when his dad had dropped out of sight and become a prisoner of the rats who probably hated music. What were the rats doing to his dad anyway? He tried to distract himself with more positive thoughts, but given the circumstances, failed. When Henry materialized on the stone floor below him, Gregor wanted to cry with relief. He lives! Henry called out, looking genuinely happy to see him. From somewhere in the darkness, Gregor heard Vicus call out, Free you, the Overlander! Free you! He felt himself being lowered to the ground. When his feet hit the stone, he fell on his stomach, unable to stand on his racked legs. They instantly gathered around him, cutting the silk off with their swords. Even Luxa and Henry helped. Tick and Temp chewed through the cords around Boots' pack. Gregor counted the bats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He could see several wounds, but everyone was alive. We thought you were lost, said Merith, who was bleeding freely from his thigh. No, I couldn't get lost. The tunnel came straight here, said Gregor, kicking his legs free happily. Not lost in direction, said Luxa. Lost forever. Gregor realized she meant dead. Not lost in direction, said Luxa. Lost forever. Sorry. What happened with the rats? He asked. All killed, said Vicus. You need not fear that they have seen you. It's worse if they have seen me, said Gregor. Why? They can smell I'm an Overlander from miles away. They know I'm here. But only the dead ones know you resemble your father, that you are a son of the sun, said Vicus. Gregor remembered how Fangor and Shed had reacted when they had seen his face in the torchlight. Mark you, Shed, it's Shade? They hadn't just wanted to kill him because he was an Overlander. They thought he was the warrior too. He wanted to tell Vicus about that, but a score of spiders were descending around them and perching in nearby webs. One magnificent creature with beautifully striped legs swung down directly in front of Vicus. He bowed very low. Greetings, Queen Weevox. Her name is Weevox. The spider rubbed her front legs over her chest as if she were playing the harp. An eerie voice came out of her, although there was no movement of her mouth. Greetings, Lord Vicus. He makes much noise, said the queen distastefully. Sorry. Greetings, Lord Vicus. Meet you, Gregor the Overlander, meet you, said Vicus, indicating Gregor. He makes much noise, said the queen distastefully, her front legs moving across her chest again. Gregor realized that was how she talked, by making vibrations on her body. She sounded sort of like Mr. Johnson in apartment 4Q, who had some kind of operation and talked through a hole in his neck. Only scary. The Overlander ways are odd, said Vicus, shooting Gregor a look that told him not to object. Why come you? Strummed Queen Weevox. Vicus told the whole tale in 10 sentences using a soft voice. So apparently you spoke to spiders quickly and quietly. Screaming at them endlessly had been counterproductive. The queen considered the story a moment. The queen considered the story a moment. As it is, Vicus, we will not drink. Web them. A horde of spiders surrounded them. Gregor watched a gorgeous gauzy funnel of silk grow up around them, as if by magic. It isolated the party and blocked all else from view. The spider stopped spinning when it reached 30 feet. Two took positions as sentries at the top. It all happened in under a minute. Everyone looked at Vicus, who sighed. You knew it would not be simple, said Sullivan gently. Yes, but I had hoped with recent trade agreement. Vicus trailed off. I hoped too high. We still breathe, said Meredith encouragingly. That is no small thing with the spinners. What's going on? Said Gregor. Aren't they coming with us? No, Gregor, said Sullivan. We are now their prisoners. Oh, man. Okay, let me get this straight, right? Let me get this straight. So they show up. Queen Weevox hears just a few things, and in 10 sentences, Vicus gives the storyline and the explanation about what's going to happen. And immediately Queen Weevox says, we will not drink, which means they won't drink them, but they are going to web them. Web them. And now they are prisoners. Chapter 17 will begin tomorrow. We're on page 180. We read 25 pages today. That is fantastic, you guys. That is a huge amount of reading. And I'm super, super grateful for that. I got really into this. So we are beyond the roaches. We have traversed. We have made it to the spinners. 6 rats recognized Gregor, which is why Vicus had them run, freaking out, wanting to make sure that they get out of scene. Then he runs into the web and is screaming at the spiders to have a response, and they are extremely offended because he's super loud and obnoxious. Vicus comes and clears that up, and then they become prisoners. So that's what we've read today. That is my summary from pages 155 to 180, and that is where we end for our time today. I want to say thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for being present and being accounted for. I want to thank you for taking the time to be literate. Some people out there are asking the big question, why is it important to read? Maybe I'll come back to that, but I want to leave that with you. What good does it do you? Even if it's the simplest, it just tells a good story. Stick with that. But really, I want you to start thinking about that. Why read? Why, right? I'm loving my new chair. I love that I can kind of lean forward and be close to you guys, but then I love that I can kind of sit back. Having a comfortable place to read is a really important thing. I'm super grateful for you. And I had a lot of fun today. Thank you for taking me into the spiders world. I am probably going to have dreams about that tonight. Hope you do. Keep me safe. Until then, I love you. Get out of here. Have a great day. Peace. Go.